Hi everyone, this is Allan McKay. Welcome to episode 154. I'm doing some Q&A. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Allan McKay podcast. Allan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Allan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Allan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on allanmckay.com.
Okay, so welcome to a brand new episode. Now, before we start, do me a favor, go check out the Ultimate Demo Reel book at allanmckay.com/myreel. And this demo reel book is going to go through every single thing that you need to know to make a successful demo reel. More importantly, this disqualifies and eliminates a lot of the myths, a lot of the misunderstandings, a lot of the false information, fake news, I'm kidding, but a lot of the information out there that I feel is more damaging than good and sets the tone correct with all the things that we should be doing. So this is written by someone who actually does the hiring. So in other words, this is me applying everything that I know, as well as working with dozens of other people over the last 20-something years, and how we've hired hundreds, thousands of people, in fact, as well as built hundreds of teams. And on top of that, I've seen so many people get dismissed, disqualified, their reel overlooked because of simple little things, and I want to set everything straight with this book. So this is free. You can get it right now. It will be available to buy on Amazon for about $20 and on Audible for about $35, but you can get the book free as well as the 2-hour free masterclass if you go to allanmckay.com/myreel right now. You can get it there. Okay. So that being said, show notes are going to be allanmckay.com/154. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm at allanmckayofficial. Okay. So I'm updating daily about 2 or 3 times per day. So if you want to get a lot of insights, free videos, and other great stuff, check it out there. Okay, so there's a lot of information I've thrown at you really quickly. Most important one is allanmckay.com/myreel. Get the free Ultimate Demo Reel book right now. Okay, so as we get into this episode, this was originally more of a bit of a rant. I had a survey, which I think now is up to a couple thousand people had filled out, but at the time it was about, I forget how many, but it was just really interesting getting a lot of people sharing a lot of insights into like what's holding them back. And I think that in a way, this might sound really negative when we get into this episode, but honestly, it's maybe a bit more of a bit of tough love, I guess, because again, it's really interesting on the surface level how we answer questions. You ask someone, what kind of person do you want to be when you're older, or what's your ultimate goal in life? And some people are going to say the answer that they think that others want to hear, or what's going to make them be in the best shade of light. And at the same time, like a lot of times when you really want to get to your goals, it's about tricking the other person into forgetting to think and just respond naturally. So I think of like really simple things. Like I used to sit next to a girl at work, and we used to have some stupid thing when we were stressed. Like I would say something and she'd say something back, or vice versa, actually. And it was just really interesting because one day I turned to her, I was like, what is it that we always say? Because it's just like one of these things that just sitting next to someone all the time you do. And consciously, she couldn't think of what it was either. And we're both kind of stumped. So I had to wait and then say it when she's not expecting it. And then naturally it comes up. In other words, that natural reaction without thinking kind of comes up. And again, it's just that trigger underneath. And I had this recently with someone where I asked them, what your ultimate goals are. And I got the very generic bullshit answer. So, by pushing their buttons a little bit, suddenly the actual answer came out. And it's really interesting because I think for her, it wasn't actually clear what her big goals were. And ever since then, all she talks about is her big goal being to crush this person in her industry. Whereas before it was always like, I just want to be respected and known for my work. And now it's like, no, I want to eliminate this son of a bitch. And again, it sometimes you're not even aware of it yourself, what you're saying and what you're actually thinking, until someone is able to dig underneath and reveal that to you as well. And so with this Q&A, it's one of those things that, again, I get such surface level answers like, I want to be really successful, but I don't have enough time. And I hate to say it, but this isn't really a Q&A. It's really a bit of a beatdown, but it's just, for me, reading some of this stuff, and it's just like, look, you've got to dig deeper on yourself, because these are giving you an excuse to fail. And I had a massive rant. I hate to say it, but I had a massive rant recently to a colleague of mine about some stupid social media stuff, basically posting some information and then offering to a couple of thousand people, like, how about I do a live webinar? And I wanted to just gauge how many people are interested. And it was, it's kind of like the 80-20 analysis. I got like 90% say, yes, please do a free webinar teaching me how I can make more money and be worth more money in my career. And then there was 10% who said no. And again, for me, it's just like, okay, that 10%, you've literally just qualified yourself to never be successful, because like you're essentially clicking that button saying, yes, I don't want to be successful. And that blows my mind that there are people out there who are just so allergic to wanting to put time into themselves that they're willing to actively communicate to other people like, yeah, no, that's bullshit. I don't care about that. Money makes me uncomfortable, or it's not all about money, and ultimately, we want to do what we do because we're passionate about it and all these other things. We want to tell stories. We want to do so much, but money is one way to gauge success. And that's not really what I'm getting at, but it is one KPI. It's one key performance indicator. So what I could say though, is that money does create freedom. And more importantly, the more money you're making, the more options you have to move forward and do the things that you want to do. And I think that that's really like how I see money, as more freedom to give back to the industry. Sorry for the loud noises. Give back to the community, give back to the industry, and have a chance to focus less on getting by and focus more on helping others get by. And that's why I love about this podcast. That's why I pour all my money into this podcast as well, because again, it's something where I want other people to be able to have similar or better success than I've had in my career. So this is part of the rant, but ultimately, when it goes back to it, when someone says like, I want to be successful, but I don't have enough time, or I wish I had enough time, that would be something for me. It's just like, well, you're essentially telling yourself like you don't need to be successful because of this thing that's standing in your way. And you got to dig deeper. You got to go beyond that stuff, because you should be regularly asking yourself these questions. And that way, what you can do is then start to see like, what is my bullshit default surface answer response that I'm giving? And then how do I call myself out on that? Okay, so if I say like, man, I'd love to do this, but I'm just not good enough. Well, fuck that. Go get good. What do you got to do to step up? What are you doing right now to get further with what you're doing? I would, but I don't have enough time. Where is all your time going? Track your time and realize like, wow, Netflix is totally standing in the way of my dreams. Then great, X Netflix out and go do more shit. It's really simple. Once you start to see the bullshit answers that you get, you're able to call yourself out on this stuff. Because I love it when I do catch myself, I say something and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, that is a bullshit answer. It allows me to move forward and say, well, okay, so if I'm saying this, what's the real story? And I think that the more that we do that, we're like my friend that I mentioned earlier, that, your entire goal might shift from like, I want to be the best person, for myself and be respected and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, no, I want to crush this person. I want to step up and I want to do really great. I want to be the man. I want to do really great in my career. And this one person is always ahead of me, so I want to get beyond them, and obviously, it goes a lot further than that. It's not like you actually want to crush and obliterate another person, but that can be a goal, that can be a motivator. So it's okay temporarily to have that. But it's great, the deeper you get, the deeper you start to realize about yourself, like, what is it that's actually driving me? Why am I doing this? And we forget it sometimes. Maybe money is actually one of those things that we get caught up in, and we need to go beyond that. Like, why did I get into it in the first place? When I was a kid, I didn't care about money. What was my dream? What was my drive? And is that still applicable now? So keep that in mind. Like, go beyond the surface level shit and really take a look at yourself. Start to trick yourself into giving the right answers. I think a couple 100,000 episodes ago, I talked about the game like So I Can, which Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income taught me, and on his podcast I was listening to one day. But it was just such a simple little gimmick. But it's basically I want to do visual effects so I can make money, so I can get a big house, so I can feel like I've made it, so I can feel safe in my environment, feel like the pressure is off, so I can relax and do the things that I want, so I can finally focus on the podcast, so I can help others. And bit by bit, you start to realize like, wow, I'm doing all these other distractions when really I'm doing them all to create freedom to do this one other thing that, let's say if it was the podcast or whatever it might be, once you do that, you realize like, wow, like the job I'm doing right now, all these other things are really financing me to be able to go on vacation once a year or whatever it might be. And when you hit that, it's like, well, why can't I just do that without these other things? Or how would I make a living directly on that thing? You trick yourself into getting to the core of what you really want, or why you're doing a certain thing, or why you're giving that excuse. And then you can have that big shift in your life. You can actually then say, well, fuck it, like fuck all the other stuff. I'm gonna just go straight to this thing. Like, why do I need all these other things taking up all my time just so I can have that big house to be able to do woodwork on weekends? Like, why don't I just, make that my profession? Or why don't I just make more time around that, or eliminate some of the things so that way I can do this more? So whatever it is, whatever those motivators are, it's really important to get to that. And that's one of those things about consulting. If you were to turn it around and say, great, I'm going to hire a, let's say a $50,000 a day consultant to consult and tell me my business, most of the time they do the exact same thing. They're going to come in and say, why? That's the number one thing that's usually going to happen, is they're going to say, why? Well, we do all this, why? So that way we get this, why? So that way, again, you cutting through the bullshit, trying to get to like, okay, what's your main motivator? What's the main thing that you're trying to do or accomplish? So that way they can then help you better rather than all the surface level stuff. So again, cut through the bullshit, and I think that's what this Q&A is more about, or it kind of ended up being after I kind of I think got excited initially. And by the way, I know I'm giving like the world's longest introduction here, but that's because I feel like this is in a way aligned with it. So, it might sound like a rant, but I'm hoping that all of this is kind of A, setting the tone, and B, it is a message in itself, okay? That it's very easy for us to have this surface level stuff. So for me, I got excited just kind of reading some of the surveys and answers, and I was like, man, like I want to start answering these right away. So I just ended up like hitting record, and I just figured it'd be fun, and I'll throw it out if it sucks. But as I started reading some of this stuff, there were a couple of really great ones, and then there was a lot of terrible ones, and it's just like the tone for me I think changed very quickly, where it's just like, no, like these are such bullshit. Like they're literally like, I want to start asking people for their email address when they fill this stuff out, because I want to contact them and say like, dude, really, like we got to talk, because the reason you're not getting to X is because of all of these things that you're saying. So why don't you change that? What can you do? And not to go on a bigger rant, but like I had someone today who signed up for my mentorship recently, and it's been about 2 months, and then they contacted me saying like, hey, I don't know if I can keep doing it. I think I'm going to quit, but I'm really excited to sign up for the live action series course that you're doing next month. And his main excuse was that he just doesn't have the time. He's like, man, I don't have any time right now to do this, so I think I'm going to have to quit. But I'm really excited. I'm going to sign up for the live action series next month. And for me, it's just like, whoa, you're not going to quit, because what are you doing trying to sign for a new course if you're saying you don't have the time right now? Like, we gotta talk about this, because you're obviously either getting distracted by shiny objects, or it goes beyond that, where you shouldn't be signing up for any new courses if time is actually a factor. We got to be working on this as well. So, and that's why I offer a lifetime access to my mentorship, because I know that people do get distracted. We run out of time. We don't have enough time in the first place. But when you make a commitment to something, you want to stick through it. And it's very easy to kind of quit with that first bit of resistance. But that's why there's a mentorship, because I want to push people past that resistance, because we're all going to have it, and some of us succumb to it, and others we persevere, we push through. And that's why I want to be able to kick people's asses occasionally and say, no, like we had that initial goal, we're going to stick through it, okay? And that's how you're going to do it. That's how you're going to push forward. You ignore those slight hesitations and you keep moving forward, okay? So, like I said, this isn't really an intro. It's more I wanted to share some additional value and some additional stuff in this, but let's move on to the Q&A. So one of the questions that came up was wanting to work in feature film, but not living in California, and therefore feeling like they wouldn't be considered for any work because they're not where the work is. And I always say that you should always go where the work is. It's kind of like if you want to drink water, you go park yourself next to the well. It makes a lot more sense than having to walk to the well every single day. But at the same time, like it is 2018. We live in a world where we have the internet, and working remotely isn't always impossible. It just really kind of comes down to your experience and everything else and who you're working for. I know tech is a little bit different, but like every website I go to these days, down the bottom right, it's going to say, now hiring, you can work remote. So in general, I think that, it is better to go where the work is. It doesn't mean that you cannot work remotely. And every single city is going to have studios. Like every single city these days will have animation and design and other needs. But obviously, if you want to work on Marvel movies and do all that, it's better to go where the work is. But like I said, it's not completely out of the question to work remotely. It's a lot harder to negotiate early in your career. But if you're 10 years in, then you can probably negotiate it a lot more easier. Obviously, California isn't the only option. Georgia is starting to really step up, and New Orleans, kind of. New York has work, LA has work, San Francisco has work. But there's every single city, Boston, you name it. There's plenty of places that have work in different industries and games and everything else. And then internationally, I could go on and on. However, the question might be more aimed at having to be in California to be considered for work. And, I've talked about this before. One of my buddies, just as one example of many, but I'm always going to bring this up just because I think it's like a good example, is that he wanted to work in LA, kept sending in resume after resume, and they kept sending back, thanks, when you get to LA, give us a call. In other words, we don't want to be responsible for relocating you, but when you get here, then let's talk. So what he did is just get a 310 number and then say, hey, I'm now in LA. When can I start? And then he got a job interview. He flew out for the job interview, started work the following week. As far as they're concerned, he lived there and everything. It's just he literally moved from Texas to California over the weekend to do that job, and he's still living in LA now in Marina Del Rey. So whatever you decide to do, you've got options. You don't need to just assume that I'm outside the bubble, therefore I need to take a huge risk to relocate. You're always going to get options, and I do think that these days you've got the option to, if you want to work remote, you're just going to have to be a bit, you got to pick and choose your clients a bit better, especially if you have the experience, then it'll always work in your favor. And one response that came up was just about not being not enough time in the day to actually put together a good demo reel. So again, if it's your first reel, that's always going to be overwhelming because you're literally starting from scratch. You got to do twice as much work because you're not piggybacking on everyone else's work. In other words, if you're working on a project, you're not getting someone else to do the animation and you're doing your bit, it's all on you. But keep that in mind that you don't need it to be as overwhelming as you think. I think the easiest thing to do is just set a goal. Okay, 3 months from now, I want to have one really good shot. Realistically, I'd say have 3 really good shots, 1 shot per month. Putting in 1 to 2 hours every day of the week, getting up at 6 a.m., making sure the night before you go to bed that you've packed your bag, your clothes out, everything's ready. 6 a.m., you can just get up, do your thing and be out the door at 8 a.m. or 5 a.m., whatever. Work your ass off. Don't make excuses as to why you can't make time for it. If you want something, you're going to make time for it, okay? Coming home at night, once the family goes to bed, stay up and work late. Again, everyone's going to understand that you're working towards a goal. They're going to have your back. Weekends, putting in time with the family, but then Sundays, you're going to, get up early and put in 7 hours. And then when everyone else is awake, then you can kind of switch gears. Again, if you want something, you're going to work towards it. But at the same time, setting your goals to be realistic, okay? So having that 3 shots, that's all you need on a reel to get a job is all you need to aim for. So don't overcomplicate it. Look at ways that you can demonstrate your ability and you're not making it too complicated. I think effects is definitely a huge trap where simulation times are so heavy that it's hard to get iterations out. And that comes with experience, but animation, everything else, even effects, just try to pick something that realistically that you can get out the door, that you're not going to, be hindered by technology too much, whatever, and just kind of look at setting it up in a way that you can have that success. I think the biggest thing is just having that goal, and most people, they kind of glaze over, I don't care about goals. Okay, so set the goal, okay? Have a goal. 3 months from now, I want to have a reel. 3 shots, that's pretty fair to do in that amount of time. If I just put in 1.5 hours every single day, and what are the big time sucks in the morning of my day? Okay, well, I got to get ready for work. I got to get dressed. I got to, pack and do all that stuff, do it the night before. Make it a no-brainer so you can get up, get started. Even the night before, set off your renders in the morning, look at them, revise them, go to work setting off a new render, come in at nighttime and tweak that render. Just make time for it. If you're serious about it, this should be the test, because if you're not doing it, then it probably says that you're not really motivated, and therefore it's not going to happen, and it's you that's preventing it from happening. The main question that I'm pulling this from is more to do with what's the big obstacle standing between you and your dream job. And I like when people are able to actually acknowledge time management practices as being one of those issues. But by saying that, it's basically saying that look, if I were more efficient, I would be better at this. But you're also acknowledging that you're maybe not putting that into practice. And I think that all of us should be practicing time management and being more efficient with our time. But acknowledging it is one thing and doing it is another. Okay, and I've got plenty of material out there. I've got a productivity guide on my website you can check out called The Productive Artist, as well as another book, which is The Overtime vs. Productivity. So if you go to allanmckay.com, you can definitely jump into those, and that's a really good start to how to be productive. There's a lot of productivity hacks that you can apply right now. And another one was just, the big obstacle is getting to know the right people. So again, this is one of those things that kind of like time management, I think it's really big when you're able to acknowledge that networking is one of the things holding you back. But again, if it's the big obstacle preventing you from hitting your goals, then I'm always going to say take ownership of it and say, well, you're basically, one way to read it, and I'm not saying that this is the case, but one way to read it is that the thing holding me back is that I haven't met the right person who is going to make it all happen for me. And again, taking ownership and saying, okay, well, look, maybe I do need to meet the right people, but I've also got to have, as a transaction, the right thing that's going to captivate that person. So in other words, if you're looking for employers, having the right reel, having the right pitch, having done the work to actually get in front of them. And if it's motivation or being lost or whatever it is, then again, networking, finding the right people who are where you want to be and being able to bring value to them enough that they're willing to reciprocate and bring value to you as well. But either way, when people are able to point out that there is a certain thing, whether it's productivity or networking, which is really saying motivation or finding the right person, both of these require you to take action before anyone else or anything else can click. So think about that, okay, trick yourself into saying, well, what is the thing holding me back? And when that answer comes to you, then dig into that. I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine who is very humble about her work. And I said, initially I'd always say what's your big goal? What would you like to do one day? And her response would always be I want to be really good in the industry, and I want to, everyone to enjoy my work and this and that. But it's only when you catch them off guard. And so for me, rewording the same question into what's the one thing holding you back from hitting your goal? And then it comes back, well, my number one competitor is this person. I need to beat them to achieve my goal. And it's almost the same question you're asking them, but by flipping it around, their defense with trying to be politically correct and say the right things goes out the window. Instead, they get to the real truth. And the thing is that you might not even be aware of it yourself. You might even be aware that really what you're aiming for is to beat that other person who you always compare yourself to, or other people compare you to. And so, you might try and cover that up from yourself, but when you're able to be honest with yourself and trick yourself by asking the right questions and get that honesty back from yourself, that changes everything. Because once you're able to dig underneath all the BS that, with trying to say the right thing and really get to the guts of it all, that's when you can start to really address it. So for instance, in that one situation, having addressed that one simple thing of there's a competitor and I must beat him, suddenly her philosophy on what she wants to do and how she weighs her business completely changed in that instance. So I always think that it's kind of funny to kind of dig deep and look under the BS. So when it is that I need someone else to, I need to be better with time management. It's no, you need to take action. You need to stop procrastinating and get off your butt, and the more you can kind of be honest with yourself, the more you can start to work around that. And I think that's a really important aspect to what we're doing. Because again, one of the key ones was time, ignorance, frustration, not having a clear way. Again, it's easy to say all that because it kind of makes you feel good to be able to acknowledge oh yeah, my problem is I'm lazy. But what are you doing to change that? Because it's easy to just say this is the reason, but all you're doing is reinforcing, yeah, I'm lazy, that's who I am, therefore I'm not going to get ahead. So I think it's better to say, okay, well, look, if I were to do this, if I were to write down like, hey, the biggest thing preventing me is that, I'm frustrated, I don't have enough time and motivation. As soon as I write that, I'm probably going to stop. And instead of posting it, I'm going to think, well, what can change? Okay, well, what if I eliminated XYZ distractions? Like, start to take action with this, because the exercise is as much for you as it is for me, because I want to get clear understanding about what people think are the things stopping them from hitting their goals. But at the same time, it's also for you to start to actually ask yourself the questions that you're probably not asking yourself. So like another one is like doubting if my work is good enough for a reel to apply to get jobs. So again, like we all have those insecurities about whether or not we're good enough, and that's totally natural. And I think that the best thing to do is to either have those people around you, not the yes people who are going to make you feel warm and fuzzy, but the people that maybe you could target around you that probably also don't have an investment in you that you can get that cold feedback from. And that alone is an insecurity, because then you're going to feel vulnerable putting yourself out there, but how else are you going to change? So going to forums, going to places, finding at least a few people that you trust their advice, you trust their opinion, and saying to them like, look, I'd like to get an honest opinion about my work. Can you take 5 minutes to just quickly say like, is this good enough, or what should I eliminate? What should I put more focus on? And again, like the more you do that, it might take a few emails to get it. But when you do, those are the people that, you might end up building relationships with, who later on can help you with your career, because you'll build that friendship and that kind of mentor-mentee kind of relationship. In addition to that, like you could start looking at other people's reels, not looking at people who are working in the industry and they're like 3-year in reel, but like look at other student reels and just kind of compare your work to theirs and see like, well, which ones are similar to mine but better, and what makes them so better. And again, like, you can always reach out to those people too for advice, because if they're maybe like 1 or 2 steps ahead of you, then that's great, because it's a lot more realistic than someone who's 10, 20 years in, who is going to, give you the much harder talk. These people are ones who are maybe a few steps ahead, and they might say like, you know what, I found this really cool resource, or this is what I was doing that really had a big impact on me. So even speaking to students and saying, well, what was the training, or what was the the thing that really kind of got you to step up your game? And again, building those relationships, and you never know where those student relationships might go as well. So the internet is such a great resource. Just getting out there and finding people, it's such a valuable thing to do. And again, I'm just kind of going through, these are literally from the last hour, just having a couple hundred people firing out responses so far out of like, a lot. But again, it's really interesting just kind of looking at, some people say the biggest obstacle is myself, and that's deep and everything, but really how manageable or how measurable is that? Like by doing that, you're reinforcing that, I'm not capable. And that is just such a negative thing to have, that there's nothing you can do with that. Like you got to dig deeper. I hate excuses like that, because all you're doing is trying to beat yourself down, either for sympathy or just because you don't want to address the issue. So, I hate to say all of this, but like, I'd rather be honest than not. Like, I want people to say, you know what, like the perfect response I would love to hear is like, you know what, I hadn't really thought about it till I tried to answer it, and I've made so many realizations about myself just by typing in my answer. I was going to say this, now I realize that I need to make some big changes, because this surface level answer that I'm giving is really just giving myself permission to fail. And I'm going to change that. I'm going to take action. Here's what I'm going to do. Someone said that, I'd be like, hell yes. So again, some of this stuff is like lack of experience. Like that's another one that comes up. And a lack of experience, okay, great. Go and look online. People are making short films all the time. People are putting student reels, putting together collaborative student reels, like doing things all the time. You don't need to go and necessarily get a job to get that experience to get a job. That's one of the big things is like, do I work for free? No, you don't ever work for free and get taken advantage of, but you're ignorant to think that that doesn't mean that you can't go and contribute. Like, I think I've mentioned this before, but a good buddy of mine, I think it was like 2 years ago now, but like I'd mentioned on stage, like about working for free, but I put it in a very strict context. And I could tell him being an employee at a very big the biggest animation studio in the world, if that's any hint to where it was. He instantly had to go on stage and be like, hey, don't ever work for free. And that I can tell is coming from a very closed-minded attitude of being an employee and being taken advantage of as an employee. But if you meet a director and they're working on a short film, in fact, this happened to me this week. I had a feature film director, big name Hollywood director, reach out to me for advice, and he's mentioning how like he's working on a new short film pretty much by himself, and he was just wanting to pick my brain about some stuff. And I'm like, dude, if you want, I'll sign an NDA, like kick over the shots. I'd like to look at it myself. And I'm not saying I'll work on it, but if it's cool, then maybe I will. Like, who cares about the money? We can figure that out later. In other words, 20 years in, I can still say I'll work for free if the right thing comes along. Okay. Because I know that at this stage in my career, just like at the beginning, the benefit isn't the money transaction. The money can come from elsewhere. If I haven't started my career yet, I can go work at Subway until I get that second train going. It doesn't matter, Subway and train, bad analogy, McDonald's, and until that second train comes along. It doesn't really matter about that. What I'm really focused on is the output. Getting experience is worth way more than getting a couple of bucks. So when someone says lack of experience, go online, look around. Plenty of people working on short films and doing cool stuff. You could jump on there and work on some things, learn some things, have some cool stuff on your reel, have experience, all the things that you need, and you do all that. Maybe you don't make any money from it, but you've got material from it. And I think that's just as beneficial. Other people are saying location, stuff like that. And that, again, I've done a bunch of podcasts around visas and all that stuff that at least you can understand the process and what you need to do. There's still going to be work in your country. Like I know a lot of people, let's say from Tehran, other cities in certain countries, that there isn't as big an industry, and a lot of people are looking to change and move to other countries, and it's also not as easy to migrate to certain countries because of where you're from a political standpoint. So there's always going to be tricky things like that, but again, we're on the internet. Like, we're at the point now where you can still get work. It mightn't be on a Marvel movie, it mightn't be all that. I'm going to always say Marvel just because that is one of the lucrative big things that are going to employ thousands of people, and also are geographically specific to Vancouver a lot of the time, especially with Fox. But keep that in mind, that like the internet has opened up so many doors that you can go online, you can get work, you can get that experience, and everything is a stepping stone. So yeah, you might not be able to do it right away. You might listen to the podcast episodes, and they'll be in the show notes if you want to check them out. But you could listen to that and say, well, crap, I don't have the experience to move to America or to move to Canada or whatever it might be. But you have the internet. You can go on 99 Designs. You can go on all these other places and start to get experience and use that as a stepping stone. Once you've got that initial work on your reel, you can start to get more work that's interesting to you, and everything is a stepping stone. Okay, like I didn't start 3D, click my fingers and say, okay, time to go work in Hollywood on a big movie and do all that. Everything is a stepping stone. Having a strategy that you can apply to it, you can connect it all together, and you say, okay, next 3 years, I'm just going to do nothing but take on every single job, say yes to everything, hustle like crazy. I just wrote an article today, literally on how to do outreach, where every single day you can be generating jobs. And I guarantee that most people are not going to do the work that's involved, even though it's 10 minutes a day max, because we're all lazy, okay? And so it sounds really cool. Like, I'm going to hustle, and I'm going to put a big picture on my wall that I paid $50 from that says hustle 24/7, and now I'm going to feel like a badass. But when it actually takes a moment for me to put those 10 minutes of work in, that's going to get me work for the next few months, that's too much. There's got to be a better system than that. And that's when you get people responding with like, yeah, if there's more time in the day. So again, I'm being harsh here, but I'd rather be real about this stuff than kind of like give everyone hugs and kisses and say everything's going to be okay. Like, if you want change, you gotta be the catalyst for change. Again, self-discipline, knowing someone to get their foot in the door, no time to study. Having a dream job is real. I'm Indian, so I can't work in the industry. Believing in my skills, self-trusting. I'm literally reading these one after another. These aren't like me handpicking these out. I'm literally reading one after another. And again, not being mean, but like, come on. One of them is supporting my family while I try to focus on learning and switching careers. And that is a real thing. Again, like the survey I put out, that was one of the things that I suspected, but at the same time, it's good to get confirmation, is that there were more people wanting to switch careers into visual effects than there were people starting out. And I think that's really interesting because I think that we're all in that where we grow up and we're trying to do what we're told is going to be the superficial but responsible, career. And after a while, we find that so unfulfilling. So after a while, we want to go and do something that we're passionate about, and it might be more work, it might be everything. And especially visual effects is not something that you just pick up. Okay, you literally devote years and years and years, and you either get filtered out of it or you make it. And that's entirely up to you. Nobody else. It's on you. But when it is a second career, there's a lot more work involved because you've got to transition safely into it. You can't just say, all right, screw it, I'm going to take some risks. So I like that there are so many people who are like, okay, I'm going to go and do something that I think is fulfilling, and I'm going to go and pursue this other thing, but you got to be intelligent about it. I did write again, my inner circle, like I got to say, like I'm proud of the content and everything. Like literally all this week, I've just been writing articles, recording videos, everything that's exclusively just in there. And I wrote what I ended up Googling it, and it was the equivalent of a novel. And I actually spent more time actually editing it down to its core essence. So I can say that it wasn't filler. It literally was as tight as it could be, but it was still a 4-part series, I think, specifically around how to transition safely from one career to another. And, that again is on my inner circle. If you want to sign up, allanmckay.com/inside. Later at some point, I definitely will revisit that because I think it's such an important subject. And again, like the fact that there are so many people who want to do this and do it safely. But, so I think that is a legitimate excuse. In fact, reading through it, there's a few back-to-back that are, that are the same, like supporting my family while switching careers. And it's more about front-loading the work, getting the experience, making decisions that are reversible rather than like, let's say, quit your job, move city, and then start looking for work. And I have some nightmare stories of people that have just literally kind of like my friend who was like reached out to a bunch of studios and said he was in LA, and then he got a job and then he moved to LA. The reverse is having people who were like, okay, I'm going to move to LA and then I'm going to like land a job, and they have nothing lined up. And LA is not a cheap city. So you gotta strategize, you gotta build a plan, test the waters, and do all this. And there's intelligent ways to do it, and then there's like really, really not intelligent ways to do it that can be very, very risky, especially if you're responsible for other people's well-being as well. So, I acknowledge that there are going to be people who are saying, yeah, like I want to switch careers into visual effects while supporting my family. And that is definitely a real thing, and you gotta figure out a way to do it. If your family is understanding and you've communicated that to them that this is something you want to do, then they're going to have your back as well. And it means that there may be some bumpy times while the transition happens, and it's something that you plan ahead for and work towards that goal, just like anything, but you can definitely do it. And I definitely will elaborate on that because I think it is, a really valid situation that is also one that a lot of us need. So again, just a couple more. I feel like I'm just going to reading out like ones that I'm like, all right, like, man, I think some of these are really great responses, and a lot of them, it says more about the person, but like, not having enough knowledge or too little knowledge. And that's like a really common one. It's like, okay, you have the internet like that. It's almost what I'm going to say to everything, but seriously, there is so much information out there. There is the whole paralysis by analysis. You're going to get like decision fatigue in a way, trying to figure out where to latch onto. And I think the best thing to do is just find one source that you trust and commit to it. Because you're right, like it's so easy to go on YouTube and type in 3D animation tutorials, and then it comes back with, 5 million responses found, and it's just like, oh boy, like where do I begin? And I'm the same way. Like there's all these things I want to learn, and I think that the secret is to learn just in time rather than just in case. So in other words, do what you need in that moment, because then it's actionable. You can apply something to it and you're going to get a result from it, rather than learning something that you may or may not apply to what you're doing. I always think that when you're doing something, have a project in mind. So if you're going to work on a demo reel, pick a shot. Go out and shoot that, then be like, okay, well, now I've shot it. I need to track it. I need to create a virtual 3D camera. So I've got to learn to track cameras. Okay, well, let's go and do that. So finding that one person, and again, it might be just searching by most views or searching by, what's rated the highest, whatever it could be. You find what, I guess, Meta, through Meta, kind of whatever rates or flags itself as being the best. But find one thing and just go all in on that one thing, whoever that is, whatever that is, but rather than like looking at too many videos and realizing like everyone has their own way of doing something, learn one way, experiment. But if you're doing it in your shot, it's going to be pretty quickly that you're going to figure out like, wait, this is working or it's not working, rather than kind of watching through a bunch of videos and not knowing which is right, which is wrong. If you're doing it and you're applying it right then and there, you'll start to see the results, and you'll start to see like, wait, this is working, it's not, what's the deal with this? Okay. So, and once you track a shot, then it's like, well, I got to go and model something and put it in there. Great. Okay. Go do that. Like focus on one thing at a time, but focus the training on that as well. Otherwise it is very easy to get, overwhelmed. It's kind of like if you're, I'm trying not to use analogies today because I've been writing all day long, and there's so many analogies I'm like throwing out the window because I'm like, no, I don't want to do this. But, if you're running, running is a perfect example. If you're running for a long time and you look up and you see how far you still have to run, it's a lot easier to look down at the ground and see that, the smaller steps that you're making are leading towards something, rather than looking at, well, crap, like it doesn't feel like I'm moving at all because I'm now looking at the big picture. Focus on the one thing that's in front of you, and that way you'll see all those wins and you'll keep motivated, and that way you won't get the fatigue by looking at all the other options you've got. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to pull out two more. Let's say one of these was the volume of people job hunting. So again, that's a real issue. Every job you're applying for, there's probably a couple hundred other people applying for the same thing. But this is where you've got to figure out how to stand out. Okay, what do you need to do to make yourself stand out from all these other people? Or how do you apply for the job that's going to make you have a unique voice? In other words, if everyone's sending in their job application, maybe you should enter through the side door. Another podcast episode that goes through how to do exactly that. So again, it'll be in the show notes, but all of these things, like you're right. Like if you're doing what everyone else is doing, how are you going to stand out? That says a lot about your work, but it also says a lot about your approach. Because if you're applying for a job the same way that everyone else is, then you're right. Like I would be worried. I personally would be worried about applying for a job, because how am I going to stand out from everyone else? Even if I have 10 times more experience than everyone else, it wouldn't matter, because they've got to actually be paying attention enough to my specific application to realize like, oh, wait a minute, this person has more experience. So really it's about front loading the work, putting in the time to say, well, what do I need to do to rise above the noise, to stand out? Is there a unique way I can get in front of everyone? What do I got to do? Okay. So think about all that stuff, because it's really important. I know people who literally hang out at bars because they know that certain studios hang out at those bars, and then they get to hang out and, shoot the shit, and eventually the right person's there and they can show their reel on their iPhone. Put in the time, like get out there. Other things like English language and Russia. So, reading through that again, like I interviewed Arman from Main Road Post. Russia has studios, obviously not as many, but the good thing is that there is a Russian film industry that's pretty successful and coming up. So again, look at your local market and then eventually move beyond that. A couple of my students from Russia are now working at really big studios on really big movies. So again, it's just about playing the strategy, putting in the time in the right place. I'll end with this one. Well, there's time, lack of experience, knowledge, and a good PC. Again, I'm not going to comment about those, but one was there are only challenges, not obstacles. And that is a fucking great one, because I love that. So I'm going to end with that. So that is a great response, that there are only challenges, not obstacles. And I love that, because that's exactly it. Every single obstacle is a challenge that you overcome. And that's exactly it. It's not a wall, it's an obstacle. You work around it. That is the challenge. So kudos to that. This wasn't an anonymous survey, so I don't know who said it, but again, that's the sort of thing that I love hearing, because really it's the mindset. I'm being harsh with some of these responses because I think that that's really the tone that I want to communicate, and just I feel like the effort with some of the responses was in a way angled where it isn't an obstacle, it's a dead end. And so to hear the opposite, I think is great, because that's just it. Like a lot of the stuff coming up is really saying more to yourself about yourself than it is saying anything to me. And I think that it's really valuable to ask yourself these questions occasionally about what we think are the things that are really standing in the way of what we want to accomplish. Sometimes we don't even ask ourselves that thing, and I think that when you actually do start to ask yourself the right questions, and you get so much clarity, and the more that you lean into it, the more you dig, And sometimes it is a matter of saying, well, why is that? The more you say it, or the more you have someone say that to you, I could say, just randomly picking one, time, money, but mostly time is the obstacle standing in between you and your dream job, money. Why is that? But the more you dig into that, it might be like, well, it isn't money, it's more to do with time. Well, why is that? It's like, well, it's to do with time, but it's more because I get distracted a lot. Why? And then you get to the core of it all. It's like, well, I'm not motivated much. Why? What do you need to change? What are the things that what are the core essence of what's stopping you from getting to what you want to do? So I'm going to leave it there. I hope this is valuable to some of you or all of you. Again, it's just one of those things that I'm taking a break from doing a lot of writing today, and just having a quick glance at the survey, I was just like, man, like there's some really great questions in here and other ones that are driving me nuts. And I'm literally just scratching the surface because it's hundreds. But I think that this is so valuable to me just to see this stuff, and I figured it'd be fun just to kind of answer some of these things too. I'm doing a live webinar on advanced demo reel hacks later to everyone in my inner circle. So again, if you're not in my inner circle, get on there. It's free. But I'm doing a live webinar for that, and that's just going to be a lot of fun to actually go through and show a lot of advanced system approaches to how to get a job and how to work around a lot of the limitations that we think that we have. And so I wanted to kind of get an insight about like, where are people at? Like, what are the big challenges you're having? Because then I can address them a little bit more. But when it is stuff like, I don't have enough time, I'm kind of curious, like, what does your time look like? Because again, I've got friends and students who didn't have much time, and all they did is get up an hour early, and they had now created an additional 10 hours a week that they can work on their stuff. So you have enough time. You just got to figure out a way to work around it. And maybe you don't have enough time, but then you look at the way that you're working and certain things. Like I definitely had times in my career where I just decided to start skipping meetings. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with one of the senior product managers at Autodesk, and he was saying that it was kind of interesting for him that he decided to start skipping meetings and not going to meetings. And it was a big shift from people looking at him like, what are you doing, and micromanaging him, to suddenly being really appreciative of his time when he did show up to meetings, or when he did something, everyone would be grateful for his time. And when he's not there, they just assume that, wow, like you must be really busy. And, it's just such a shift that you're freeing up your time, and because you're not doing what everyone else is doing, conforming, that can definitely change people's perspective. And I'm not saying that that's always the case, but it was an interesting observation in his case that he noticed that. I'll leave it there. And again, like, I think that if you have questions, shoot me an email. So go in the show notes, but on my website, you can contact me there. Otherwise, aimckay@allanmckay.com. These are, really insightful. And I think that if you want to share like questions you have, I'd love to do more Q&A on the podcast and kind of have a chance to kind of give responses to a lot of this stuff. So, feel free to contact me anytime. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that and got a lot from it. If you want to check out the show notes, go to allanmckay.com/154. And at the same time, make sure you get the free Ultimate Demo Reel book. It's available right now, free. Later on, it's going to go up in Amazon and Audible, but you can get it right now for free at allanmckay.com/myreel. In addition to that, there's the free 2-hour masterclass that you'll be able to get access to as well. And I haven't actually mentioned this, but I've been building a lot of additional videos for everyone who signs up. So in addition to all that stuff, I'm also giving out a lot of free additional videos following up on a lot of these subjects, because I've been building out so much. Like, in case you haven't noticed, this month has been tied around the same subject, and that is that I really want to hit it hard and really just be able to say, like, look, go check out all these episodes back to back. It's essentially a free course that will teach you all of this stuff. And in conjunction with the book and the advanced masterclass, all of this stuff, it ties together to give you everything you need, okay? So a couple episodes ago, I did an episode on how to get anyone's email address. Next episode 155, I'm going to talk a lot about really building strong relationships and a lot about hustling and a lot of cool stuff around that. And the following episode is going to be all about my personal outreach system. So how I'm able to go and build relationships every single day to last me a lifetime. And I talk about, and I have talked about in the past, like 1 or 2 relationships that I might have had in the past have literally given me unlimited possibilities and options. And again, like all of this stuff, like if you do that just by sending an email on a whim or bumping into someone, well, what if you purposely do it? You manufacture relationships, and not in an illegitimate, scammy, or insincere way, but it's more about just being proactive. You know, we all talk about we want to hustle and we're grinding and hustling and doing this cool shit, and we're not. Like, as soon as it requires any work or effort, it's just like, I don't need to do that, insert excuse. And then you end up answering the Q&A with some bullshit excuse. So this is where I want to change things up. This is a chance for us to step it up and really hustle, really grind. And everything that we're doing this month is all around this. And next month, we're going to shift it. We're going to be doing a lot of really awesome things in a whole different space. And this is how it's going to continue to evolve. So get excited for this and go back, look through the episodes, start to connect the dots, because this is all connected. And I don't think that all of us are aware of that, but all of these episodes are tied together for a reason. Okay, so this is your course. This is your chance to really absorb it all and build it out as a blueprint for yourself and your own success. Okay, so that being said, I'll be back next episode with the one thing that's more effective than a demo reel. Until then, rock on.